Talking about Marilyn Monroe means we are not only discussing an actress, but also a legendary name whose legacy extends far beyond the world of film. Marilyn Monroe is a symbol of charm, glamour, and mystery that continues to live on even decades after her passing. On screen, she appeared captivating, with a blend of beauty, softness, and allure that seemed almost impossible to rival. Yet behind her smile, her gaze, and her dazzling appearance, Marilyn was a woman constantly fighting to be recognized not merely as a beautiful star, but as an artist with genuine depth. Through films such as Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, The 7-Year Itch, and Some Like It Hot, Marilyn Monroe became one of the most famous faces in Hollywood history. To this day, her name remains synonymous with silver screen glamour, the elegance of the classic era, and a life story that continues to stir curiosity. Before the world knew her as Marilyn Monroe, she was born as Norma Jeane Mortensen on June 1, 1926, in Los Angeles, California. Her childhood was far from the luxury that would later become attached to her image. She grew up in unstable circumstances, moving between foster homes and orphanages because her mother suffered from mental health issues. From an early age, Norma Jeane lived with insecurity and a lack of affection, something that later shaped the fragile side of her as an adult. At a young age, in order to avoid being sent back to an orphanage, she married James Dougherty in 1942. That marriage happened long before the world knew her as a major star. Her life began to change when she worked in a defense factory during World War II and was accidentally discovered as a photo model. From there, her path into the entertainment world opened up. Her modeling career developed rapidly, and in 1946 she signed a short contract with 20th Century Fox. It was at this point that Norma Jeane slowly transformed into Marilyn Monroe, a name that would later echo around the world. Behind that transformation, she understood that appearance alone would never be enough. Marilyn wanted more than simply being admired. She wanted to be remembered for her talent and her presence as a true performer. Marilyn Monroe's journey to the top of fame did not happen overnight. In the early years of her film career, she was given only minor roles. Yet her presence was already enough to steal attention. The camera seemed to have a special relationship with her. Little by little, audiences began to realize that there was something different about this young blonde woman. By the early 1950s, her name started to rise through films such as Love Nest, Clash by Night, and especially Niagara, which strengthened her image as a glamorous woman with extraordinary appeal. After that, Marilyn's career truly soared. The year 1953 became one of the defining moments when she starred in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire. These two films were not only major commercial successes, but they also established her as one of Hollywood's leading stars. Her charm was no longer just a supporting element in a film. It became the main magnet that drew audiences into theaters. Then in 1955, through The 7-Year Itch, Marilyn once again captured the world's attention. The scene of her white dress blowing upward became one of the most memorable moments in cinema history. But Marilyn did not want to be endlessly placed only as a symbol of glamour. She wanted to be respected as a serious actress. That is why she began to challenge the studio system that restricted her image too much. Together with Milton Green, she founded Marilyn Monroe Productions, a bold step that showed she wanted greater control over her own career. She also studied at the Actors Studio to sharpen her acting skills more deeply. The results began to show in Bus Stop in 1956, when many people started to take her more seriously as an actress. Her artistic peak came with Some Like It Hot in 1959, a comedy film that is still considered one of Hollywood's finest works. Through this film, Marilyn successfully displayed her brilliant comedic side and won a Golden Globe for Best Actress in the musical or comedy category. She later continued her career with The Misfits in 1961, the last completed film released during her lifetime. Marilyn Monroe also had a very strong musical side to her career. She was not a singer who pursued a conventional recording career like professional music artists, but her voice and performances in films became an essential part of her appeal as an entertainer. Marilyn had a soft, playful, sensual, and highly distinctive singing style, which left a strong impression even though she was better known through acting. One of the most iconic musical moments of her life came through the song Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend in the 1953 film Gentlemen Prefer Blondes. That performance was not only a huge success, but it also became a part of world pop culture history. The pink dress, the luxurious stage setting, And the way Marilyn delivered the song turned it into a symbol of Hollywood glamour that is still remembered today. For many people, that performance is one of the strongest representations of Marilyn Monroe's image. Marilyn's musical ability was also evident in Some Like It Hot through the song I Wanna Be Loved by You. In that film, she was not only visually captivating, but also demonstrated comedic timing, charm, and a voice that made her character feel truly alive. In addition, she performed songs in films such as River of No Return and Let's Make Love. Through these performances, it becomes clear that music was an important part of her artistic identity. She may not have left behind a collection of albums like professional singers, but Marilyn Monroe's musical legacy continues to live on through her films, her iconic songs, and her unique way of conveying emotion through her voice. Behind her image as a glamorous Hollywood icon who is often misunderstood as merely a dumb blonde, Marilyn Monroe actually had a much deeper, calmer, and more intellectual personality. One of Marilyn's greatest passions was reading. She was known as an avid reader and even had a personal library containing more than 400 books, ranging from classic literature, philosophy, poetry, to psychology. She enjoyed the works of great writers such as James Joyce, Walt Whitman, and Dostoevsky, which shows that behind her outward beauty, Marilyn was a woman hungry for thought and knowledge. Her love for the inner world could also be seen in her habit of writing poetry, journals, and personal notes, which she often used to pour out her emotions, anxieties, and reflections on life. Her curiosity was so great that she even took literature classes at UCLA to deepen her insight and develop herself further. At the same time, Marilyn also had a refined taste in art. She loved classical music and jazz, and enjoyed the works of Louis Armstrong, Earl Bostic, Beethoven, and Mozart. In her daily life, Marilyn also maintained her fitness by regularly doing light weightlifting with 5-pound dumbbells and practicing yoga as part of her morning routine, long before such habits became popular among women. In addition, she also enjoyed simpler and more personal activities, such as cooking, trying out recipes in the kitchen, enjoying home-cooked meals, ice cream, and French cuisine. Marilyn also found peace in nature, including gardening, and was known to deeply love animals, with one of her most famous pets being her beloved little dog named Maff. While living in New York, she also enjoyed visiting art museums and attending theater performances, showing that her interest in art was never limited only to cameras and movie screens. As the most famous woman of her time, Marilyn Monroe's love life was almost never free from public attention. Her earliest and most official relationship was her marriage to James Dougherty in 1942. At that time, Marilyn was still very young, and that marriage was born more out of difficult life circumstances than from a glamorous love story like those later often attached to her image. After her name began to shine in Hollywood, Marilyn married baseball legend Joe DiMaggio in January 1954. Their relationship quickly became one of the most talked-about couples in America. DiMaggio was a sports icon, while Marilyn was the center of attention in the entertainment world. But behind the image of a perfect couple, their marriage was filled with pressure, media scrutiny, and clashes of personality, and it lasted only about 9 months. After that, Marilyn married the renowned playwright Arthur Miller in 1956. This marriage seemed to bring together two very different worlds, the sparkle of Hollywood and the intellectual world of literature. In that relationship, Marilyn appeared to seek a quieter, deeper, and more meaningful life. But in the end, that marriage too could not last and officially ended in 1961. Beyond her 3 marriages or most well-known official relationships, Marilyn's love life was also colored by several other connections that continue to stir public curiosity. In the mid-1950s, she was rumored to have had a brief relationship with director Elia Kazan, during a time when Marilyn was struggling hard to be recognized not only as a sex symbol, but as a serious actress. In that closeness, Marilyn was described as a fragile yet highly dedicated woman, someone hungry for artistic recognition and often seeking validation from those she believed could understand her talent. A few years later, while starring in the musical comedy Let's Make Love in 1960, Marilyn was also involved in a brief but famous affair with French actor Yves Montand. The two appeared together in the film and sang the song Incurably Romantic, while the chemistry seen on screen reportedly continued into real life during filming, even though Montand was still married to Simone Signoret at the time. Not long after that, Frank Sinatra's name also entered the circle of her personal life. Marilyn and Sinatra's relationship began as a close friendship that later developed into a brief romance around 1961. Although it did not last long, Sinatra was known as one of the most protective figures in Marilyn's life during her difficult times. He was said to provide her with a sense of safety, comfort, and even to be one of the few men who truly made Marilyn feel understood. Interestingly, amid the many rumors and speculations that always surrounded her, not every man close to Marilyn had a romantic relationship with her. Milton Berle, for example, was better known as a friend and professional colleague who often appeared with her at Hollywood charity events. Their relationship was more of a warm and trusting friendship, not a love story as the public sometimes imagined. Another name most frequently linked to Marilyn Monroe was President John F. Kennedy. Their connection has long been one of the most famous celebrity political romance rumors of the 20th century. Although the exact details were never fully clear, many biographies and historical reports believe that Marilyn and JFK did indeed have a brief relationship, suspected to have taken place in early 1962. The mystery surrounding that relationship only strengthened Marilyn's legend in the public eye. Before all that, Marilyn was also reported to have had a brief relationship with Charlie Chaplin Jr. in 1947, long before she reached the height of her fame. Even Marlon Brando, one of Hollywood's most charismatic actors, was also said to have had a close and brief relationship with Marilyn in the mid-1950s. Their connection was described as intense, full of attraction, and happening during an important transitional period in Marilyn's life, between the end of her relationship with Joe DiMaggio and before her marriage to Arthur Miller. Marilyn Monroe remained a woman who repeatedly searched for a safe place in relationships, yet often found pain, pressure, and loneliness instead. At the time of her death in 1962, Marilyn Monroe's net worth was estimated to be around $800,000. Adjusted for inflation today, that amount would be roughly equivalent to around $7 million to $7.5 million. That figure may sound large, but for a star as enormous as Marilyn Monroe, it is actually considered smaller than many people might imagine. The public long knew her as a symbol of Hollywood luxury, with a glamorous lifestyle, beautiful clothes, expensive jewelry, and a home reflecting her status as a global entertainment icon. Yet behind that glittering image, her expenses were also extremely high, so the wealth she left behind was not as large as people assumed. Even so, it was precisely after her passing that Marilyn Monroe's value rose far higher. In her will, Marilyn left most of her estate, including personal belongings and rights to her image, to her acting coach Lee Strasberg, someone she regarded as a family figure and a source of support in a world that often made her feel alone. From there, Marilyn's legacy grew far beyond the value of her wealth during her lifetime. Her personal belongings sold for extraordinary prices, and in a 1999 auction alone, they brought in more than $13 million. Beyond that, Marilyn Monroe's name and image have continued to live on as a very powerful pop culture brand, generating millions of dollars every year through licensing, advertising, products, and various commercial rights. Even decades after her death, Marilyn remains one of the most valuable figures in celebrity history, proving that although her life ended early, the legacy of her name has only grown larger over time. After Lee Strasberg died in 1982, those inheritance rights passed to his third wife, Anna Strasberg, even though Anna herself had never personally known Marilyn. For many years, through Marilyn Monroe LLC, Anna managed the licensing of Marilyn's name and image as a highly valuable commercial asset. Then in January 2011, the majority ownership of those rights was sold to Authentic Brands Group together with Nika, and since then, ABG has become the main holder of Marilyn Monroe's intellectual property rights. Behind the spotlight, her captivating smile, and her glamorous image, Marilyn Monroe carried a much more complicated personal life. She also faced enormous pressure because she was constantly treated as a sex symbol, even though deep inside she had a strong desire to be respected as a serious actress. That struggle made her life far from peaceful. In her final years, Marilyn faced various personal problems, including declining health, emotional pressure, and dependency on tranquilizers and sleeping pills. All of this became the dark side of the life of a woman who, from the outside, seemed to have everything. In August 1962, the world was shocked by the news of her death. Marilyn Monroe was found dead in her home in Los Angeles at the age of 36. Her passing at such a young age left deep sorrow, while also intensifying the mysterious aura that had long surrounded her. Behind the glitter of fame, Marilyn was a human being who constantly struggled against wounds, loneliness, and the crushing weight of life. She is remembered not only for her beauty, but also for the paradox that clung to her, admired by many, yet often feeling alone, appearing strong in front of the camera, yet in truth carrying many wounds, shining brightly before the world, while living with deep inner turmoil. Though her life was short, Marilyn Monroe's legacy remains incredibly powerful. She is remembered not only as a successful film star, but also as an eternal symbol of the classic Hollywood era.